On a cold February afternoon in Wenatchee, Washington, 17-year-old Mackenzie Cowell exited the back door of her beauty school for what was supposed to be a brief break. She didn't inform anyone of her plans. She simply stepped outside and vanished. Several hours later, her car was discovered in a remote canyon far from town. The vehicle was locked, her purse remained inside, and only a single set of footprints led away through the snow. No one knew where she had gone or what had occurred, but it was clear something was seriously wrong. What began as a missing person report quickly escalated into a far more troubling situation. In the quiet town of Wenatchee, Washington, 17-year-old Mackenzie Cowell was recognized as a lively and dedicated young woman with a promising future. She split her time between the homes of her divorced parents while preparing to graduate from high school. Alongside her academic commitments, Mackenzie was chasing her dream of becoming a hairstylist by attending the Wenatchee Academy of Hair Design. Her life was busy and full, consisting of early mornings, long days, and evenings performing with her school's dance group or modeling at local events. Mackenzie had also faced her share of hardships, including years of teasing over a noticeable underbite, which she planned to correct through surgery. Yet, she approached life with remarkable resilience, earning admiration from both friends and family for her steadily growing confidence. Her father often praised Mackenzie's relentless drive and determination. Her days began before sunrise and stretched late into the evening. At that time, she was dating Joaquin Vale Ocano, and the two were almost always together. Life seemed to be falling into place, until February 9, 2010, when everything changed. That evening, Mackenzie had plans to have dinner with her father, Reed Cowell. It was meant to be a rare break in her busy schedule, but she didn't call after school as she normally did. Reed's concern quickly turned to fear. By 8 p.m., just as the family was preparing to report her missing, the police reached out first. Mackenzie's car, a 2000 Pontiac Grand Prix, had been found abandoned on a remote stretch of Pitcher Canyon Road, miles from the academy and a place few had any reason to visit. The scene was bleak, isolated, dark, and blanketed in snow. Her car was locked, yet inside were her purse and some clothing. Missing, however, were her phone, debit card, and keys. A single set of footprints led away from the vehicle, indicating she had likely been alone when it was abandoned. The search for Mackenzie began immediately, with bloodhounds, helicopters, and volunteers scouring the steep, rugged terrain near where her car had been found, but they came up empty-handed. The case was classified as an endangered missing person, though not enough to trigger an Amber Alert. The story quickly captured local and eventually national attention. Mackenzie's image appeared on news broadcasts, and the FBI dispatched agents to assist local detectives. Everyone was desperate for answers, yet nothing added up. Mackenzie had no history of running away. She was responsible, well-liked, and deeply connected to both her family and her community. Surveillance footage from the Beauty Academy provided a limited glimpse into Mackenzie's last known movements. Around 3 p.m., she was captured leaving through the back door after telling classmates she was stepping out for a short break. Roughly 40 minutes later, her boyfriend received a casual text reading, "Hey, what's up?" After that, her phone went completely silent. That message became the final digital trace she left, though her debit card, which held only a small balance, remained untouched in the following days. As the investigation progressed, witnesses began to come forward. Several residents near Pitcher Canyon reported seeing a tall, slim man with dark hair and a long coat walking alone near the area where Mackenzie's car would later be discovered. This sighting, between 4:30 and 5:30 p.m., aligned with the estimated time her car may have been abandoned. Police shifted their focus to Mackenzie's phone records, sifting through thousands of messages, calls, and social media interactions on platforms like Facebook and MySpace. Despite the overwhelming amount of data, no solid lead emerged. One journalist covering the case noted that suspicion seemed to overshadow the investigation from the very start. For 3 days, detectives did not treat it as a runaway case. Meanwhile, her family, friends, and investigators clung to hope, distributing flyers, combing the area where her abandoned car had been found, and pursuing every possible lead. But that hope would soon turn to heartbreak. On the 4th day, tragedy struck. Along the banks of the Columbia River in Douglas County, search crews discovered a body. The remains were soon confirmed to be Mackenzie's, still clad in her beauty school uniform. The scene was chilling, and authorities withheld many details, though what was revealed was deeply unsettling. Mackenzie had suffered a brutal attack, beaten, stabbed, and strangled. Toxicology reports showed no drugs or alcohol in her system. She had not been sexually assaulted, but there was evidence of a post-mortem attempt to dismember her, including a partially severed arm and a serrated knife lodged in her shoulder. Nearby, discarded duct tape was found in the dirt. Dive teams returned to the river, and the search expanded across Crescent Bar and the surrounding counties. Investigators were hunting for clues, though they admitted they had no clear suspects. Mackenzie may have been targeted by someone she knew, or by a stranger lurking in the shadows. Her death sent shockwaves through the community. As news spread through local schools and neighborhoods, over 1,800 people attended a memorial service to honor the young life so tragically and violently cut short. The FBI increased its involvement, forming a dedicated task force to support the investigation. Detectives began, as is often standard, by looking close to home. Mackenzie's boyfriend, Joaquin Vallecano, and her mother's boyfriend, Joey, were both questioned. Joaquin, reportedly shaken, failed a polygraph question about whether he knew who had killed Mackenzie, but was eventually cleared of suspicion. Joey had allegedly argued with Mackenzie the day before she disappeared, but no evidence linked him to her death. As weeks turned into months, investigators pursued lead after lead. One tip came from Liz Reed, a former drug user turned police informant. She claimed to have seen a video depicting Mackenzie's murder, a so-called snuff film, and implicated two men, Sam and Emmanuel. Liz even provided the police with a ring she said belonged to Mackenzie, allegedly recovered from the murder scene. However, no one in Mackenzie's circle recognized the ring, and Liz's story quickly unraveled. She later recanted, claiming she had spoken out of fear of being falsely accused. Despite this setback, investigators continued their work, following over 750 tips and conducting more than 800 interviews. DNA samples were collected from dozens of people, yet no breakthrough emerged to identify the person responsible. Mackenzie's mother remained silent for months, out of respect for the investigation's integrity. But as time passed with no answers, she chose to speak publicly, urging anyone with information, no matter how small, to come forward. Her televised plea was raw and heartfelt. "We were asked not to speak, but the only thing worse than losing your child is not seeing justice." The investigation took a new turn when a fresh informant came forward. Theo Keyes, writing from prison, provided a name: Christopher Wilson, a former friend of his. Wilson had a history of violence, once choking a woman at a party without provocation, then acting as if nothing had happened. At 29, Wilson had studied at the same cosmetology academy as Mackenzie and lived just blocks from the school. Those who knew Christopher described him as quiet, polite, but odd. Further digging revealed a disturbing fascination with death and serial killers, a chilling detail given the brutal nature of Mackenzie's murder. With this new lead, detectives began to realize that the answers they had been seeking might have been hiding in plain sight all along. The final pieces of the puzzle were beginning to take shape, and Wenatchee would never be the same. Wilson had worked at local funeral homes, and some classmates recalled unsettling remarks he had made, boasting about cutting people up while handling bodies. Another remembered him claiming to have strangled someone with a belt during a hotel encounter. Despite these disturbing stories, those close to him defended his character. His mother insisted that being different didn't make her son dangerous, and his best friend described him as kind and generous, if misunderstood. Yet Chris stood out in more ways than just personality. He had been at the academy on the same day Mackenzie disappeared and had left through the same back door, just 2 minutes after her. Beyond that point, his movements became unclear. Although he exchanged a few texts with his ex-girlfriend, no one could confirm Wilson's whereabouts that afternoon. He had no prior criminal record, and when questioned by police, he denied ever knowing Mackenzie. He even consented to provide a DNA sample, a decision that would prove to be a critical mistake. DNA recovered from a piece of duct tape found near Mackenzie's body matched Wilson. The remote location where her body was found made it highly unlikely this was a coincidence. When confronted with the DNA evidence and asked if he had ever been near the area, Chris denied it entirely. Upon learning that his DNA had been linked to the scene, he requested a lawyer, and the interview ended. Investigators also noted the eerie parallels between Chris's fascination with Dexter, a fictional character who dismembered victims, and the post-mortem injuries inflicted on Mackenzie. That, combined with the DNA match and the suspicious timing of his departure from the school, provided enough evidence for an arrest. After 8 agonizing months, police took Christopher Wilson into custody at the apartment beneath a local salon where he lived. Although he had no personal relationship with Mackenzie beyond attending the same school, and had even been present at her memorial, comforting friends, he was now accused of her murder as detectives combed through his apartment and devices. The case took an even darker turn when a large, discolored patch of carpet tested positive for Mackenzie's blood. Chris's claim that the stain was from spilled water was disproven, confirming that she had been killed in his home. How she ended up there, however, remains a mystery. Mackenzie's father insisted that his daughter would never have gone anywhere with someone she didn't trust. But questions remained. Did she have more interaction with Chris at school than anyone realized? Was she tricked or coerced? No one could say for certain. Then came another shocking development. Police arrested 22-year-old Tessa Maria Skillman, a friend of Chris Wilson, on charges of first-degree rendering, criminal assistance, and obstructing a public officer. Photos recovered from Chris's computer showed Tessa posing over the exact spot on his apartment floor where Mackenzie's blood had been found. Tessa claimed she was unaware of the stain and was merely being photographed by Chris, but video evidence suggested otherwise. In one clip, Chris can be heard asking Tessa whether the apartment looked clean, to which she responds, "Clean, I guess." The phrase, "Yeah, it's clean considering," was deeply unsettling. The footage even focused on the exact spots where Mackenzie's blood was later confirmed. Tessa claimed the video was related to Chris moving out and trying to get his deposit back while she was arrested and posting bond. She was never formally charged, and her role remains one of the most baffling aspects of the case. Christopher was held on a $1 million bond and pleaded not guilty to the charges. His courtroom appearance drew an emotional crowd. His mother wept as he entered, and several supporters continued to insist on his innocence, including young women who had known him personally and couldn't believe he was capable of such violence. For Mackenzie's friends and family, however, the lingering doubts about Wilson's guilt felt like a cruel denial of the tragedy they had suffered. Robin Jones, a close friend of Mackenzie, reminded the public who the true victim was. Mackenzie had never asked to be abducted, murdered, and discarded along the Columbia River. She was a vibrant teenager, full of life and potential. Investigators pressed on, submitting additional evidence to the lab and questioning people connected to Wilson. Yet one crucial piece remained elusive, a clear motive. Some close to the case speculated that Mackenzie may have simply been an easy target for someone disturbed. As the legal battle intensified, Wilson's defense team, led by prominent attorney John Henry Brown, known for representing high-profile clients including Ted Bundy, worked aggressively to exclude key evidence from the trial. A judge ultimately ruled that prosecutors could not introduce Wilson's work at local funeral homes or reference his Hannibal Lecter tattoo. The defense also pushed conspiracy theories, claiming law enforcement had planted Mackenzie's blood in Wilson's apartment. They revived the abandoned theory involving Sam and Emmanuel, the two men previously accused by informant Liz Reed. Wilson's mother backed these claims, convinced her son had been framed. The defense emphasized that no DNA evidence linked Wilson to Mackenzie's car or the knife found in her body. They also challenged the authenticity of the ring Liz claimed belonged to Mackenzie, citing poor quality photos and a lack of recognition from her family and friends. Despite these arguments, prosecutors grew increasingly confident, and Wilson's charges were upgraded to first-degree murder. If convicted, he faced up to 26 years in prison, based on the conclusion that Mackenzie's death had been premeditated. In April 2011, Wilson was offered a plea deal of 6 years for a manslaughter charge, but he initially refused, insisting on his innocence. Many were stunned, given the overwhelming evidence and the potential length of his sentence. The offer had seemed unusually lenient. As the trial approached, however, Wilson reconsidered, deciding to accept the plea after jury surveys indicated he was unlikely to receive a fair trial. By then, the original 6-year deal was no longer available. Mackenzie's family requested that Wilson read a formal statement in court acknowledging his actions. He recited, "This is my statement. I also did recklessly cause the death of Mackenzie Caswell by strangulation and by stabbing her with a knife." When asked if this was true, he replied, "Yes." However, afterward, Wilson claimed his statement was false and that he had only agreed to it to secure the plea deal. He continued to insist he had been set up. Ultimately, in May 2012, Wilson pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter, first-degree robbery for stealing Mackenzie's phone, and assault in an unrelated case. He was sentenced to over 14 years in prison, with credit for time already served. In a deeply emotional moment after the hearing, Mackenzie's family and Wilson's family embraced, exchanging apologies in a case marked by heartbreak. The gesture was a rare moment of compassion. Wilson later attempted to withdraw his guilty plea through the Washington Court of Appeals, but the appeal was denied. Years passed, and in late 2023, after serving 11.5 years, Christopher Scott Wilson was released from prison at the age of 43. Mackenzie Caswell never lived beyond 17, yet in her brief life, she left a lasting legacy of determination, kindness, and unwavering ambition. Her bedroom remains largely unchanged, a silent shrine to the life she was building. Outside their home, her father, Reed Caswell, hangs a wind chime that sings when the breeze passes through. He says it feels like hearing his daughter's voice once more. "You are my special gift from God," he says. "You will never leave my heart."